Just last week, Sunday afternoon, these two women came in. They were intense in conversation, even as they were walking through the front door. One of them was sad, deeply sad. They sat at the bar and ordered vodka and soda with a twist. They specifically asked for absolute vodka. Now, we just had a really busy weekend, and we were out of absolute. So I told the two women, I said, I'm sorry, we're out of absolute. We can give you Sky, but no absolute. One woman looks at the other woman and says, no absolute. It's a sign. There are no absolutes. The other woman looks back and said, only Sky. It's definitely a sign. I hear this kind of thing all the time. People are so desperate for answers that they create them from thin air, from sold-out vodka. I made the drinks. I gave them each a heavy pour because I figured that's what they needed. The first woman, the sad one, takes out her visa and tells me to leave the tab open. As she passed the card to me, she asked, so, do you believe in signs? Sure do, I said. Because I knew that's what she wanted me to say. But what I believe is this. I believe in keeping it simple. I believe that things have a beginning and they have an end, and that's just how it works. No God, no signs, no involvement from the universe. It's just life, and we live it. And because we've got to live that life, I believe that there's comfort and even power for those who seek it in a dark bar and a strong drink.
Please don't say YOLO. I hate that word. It's not about that. It's not about doing things just to say you've done them. It's about embracing the impermanence of it all. That knowledge that, hey, in 10 years you might already be gone, and in your last moments, did you live your life the way you wanted to? And if you really think living your life the way you want to is doing stupid things just to say you can, well, I mean, I'm not judging or anything. It's just not for me. I like to look at things, and art or flowers or watch a movie or read a book, and I like that knowledge that one day I won't remember much about it. I might remember some fuzzy outline of a painting I saw or the name of the actor in the film, but I won't remember the finer details, you know? I'd like to look at things close up to see life and everything as it was meant to be seen and enjoy them there in that moment. It's like, I saw this on the news a few days ago. There was a boy that died, his house caught fire, and the news showed the firefighter carrying his body. Well, he couldn't have been more than 2 or 3, and the boy was limp in his arms, and the firefighter just handed him off to his mother, and she just collapsed on the ground, cradling her baby. And that was one of the most beautiful things I ever saw. Oh, no, not that the boy died. That's awful, terrible, really. But there was that moment where I was watching and I felt connected to them for just an instant, both the firefighter and the mother, sharing that memory, that feeling of loss and hopelessness, and we had a moment. I felt that empathy for them. I was crying, the firefighter was crying, the newscaster was crying. The only person who wasn't crying was the mother, who just sat there with her baby in her arms, rocking him back and forth with her eyes that just looked so hollow, so empty, you know? But I also knew that a year from now I wouldn't remember that moment at all, but for a brief moment we were all connected, a sharing of grief that crossed whatever distance was between me and them. Everything gets forgotten eventually, and it's so freeing when you really think about it. I mean, think about it. Go ahead, think about it. Close your eyes and really think about it. Go ahead, close them. God, it's so freeing, isn't it? That's all I want, really. I think that's all anyone really wants, just the freedom to live life as they choose. So why can't we, huh? That's a rhetorical question. Don't answer that. Because the real answer is there's no real reason why we can't. I mean, as long as you don't break the law, who cares what people are going to think of you? Any embarrassment, hurt feelings, or whatever you may suffer will be forgotten eventually. Those people who told you no will be forgotten. You'll be forgotten. I'll be forgotten. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't it wonderful to be so free?
Well, that night a blizzard came. The snow whirled around and floated down like coconut flakes, covering so many macaroons. My Aunt Angela, she used to make them every holiday. She was always Aunt Angela, never Aunt Angie. I only made that mistake once. "Do I look like an Angie?" she said. Her eyebrows rose almost as high as the heels of her shoes, perched upon which she glared down at me like a judge in court. She was a tall woman already before adding the heels, so her scowl was especially daunting. Once my sister, she was 3, she got confused. She said, "Are we having macaroons and cheese?" "Well, of course we are," said my aunt, so that's how it started. Macaroni and cheese, followed by macaroons. She made it every time we visited. Oh, did I mention I hate coconut? I'm not allergic or anything, I just can't stand it. Every time I taste coconut, I imagine I am eating upholstery batting, dusted with sugar. How can anything be that dry and that chewy? So rather than try and pretend to eat them, I decided to take advantage of the fact that I didn't mind macaroni and cheese. I would eat just enough of the pasta that I could decline the dreaded macaroons, saying I was too full. Well, if you asked my aunt, she would say I loved macaroni and cheese. Of course, this surprised my mother, towards whose mac and cheese I was much less enthusiastic. So after a couple of visits, my mom, she cornered Aunt Angela in the pantry, demanding the recipe. Well, after that, the frequency of mac and cheese then at my house went up. "I don't understand," my mom would say as she studied my half-eaten pile of elbow noodles. "I'm using your aunt's recipe." I don't think she ever figured it out. Well, the funny thing is that macaroni and macaroon, they come from the same word in Greek, makarios, blessed. I didn't learn that, or the fact that the word is related to funeral meals, till later. That night, a blizzard came. I saw the snow and I was remembering the macaroons when the phone rang. There had been an accident. A whiteout, slippery roads, a small car careening off the highway into a telephone pole. It was Aunt Angela. I went into the kitchen, opened the cabinets, slowly, solemnly, as if I were sliding the lid off a sarcophagus. Took down the noodles, grater, cheese, and the coconut flakes.
I've never liked the smell of macaws. Then Friday, my manager Eleanor asked me to clean out the blue one's cage. Now, it's Friday night nearing 5:30, and she's acting like maybe she doesn't know that the Petco closes early on the weekend. Like maybe she's forgotten that in 20 minutes from now, Jake and Lauren and me, if not for this, are going to be going up and down the aisles, letting the customers know what we know, what they know, and what has apparently slipped Eleanor's mind concerning the imminent closing of the store and how they should be proceeding to the checkout with their Petco merchandise. Not much of a manager, I'm thinking, as Eleanor just hands me the poop-off parrot cage cleaner. And if she can't even remember when we're supposed to be closing on the weekends. There's enough time left? Because doesn't the sign on the door say we close at 6? I'm asking, and she's smiling her reptile grin and nodding and handing me the Happy Trails brush and ushering me towards the macaw corner. With that awful smell and that clawing, cawing blue stink piece. Eleanor starts in on the Petco policy of not closing out the registers before the Petco's closed. As though seeing the credit card receipts being counted is really going to ruin the magic of the customer's experience. Like before that, the Jim and Janes at Palo Alto really imagined themselves walking into a rainforest, cum tropical reef, cum puppy field, and just plucking up their pet or hamster feed. And their suspension of disbelief has what? Been snapped by my just looking to get out of there at the end of the day, just trying to be as efficient as possible in that direction. But Eleanor's not the kind of manager who's looking for efficiency. No. Eleanor's the kind of manager who's looking to cater to macaws like princesses. So maybe nobody will know that they came here 5 to a crate, packed in like blue cartilage-beaked cotton balls all the way from Brazil. I'd like to see the same thing happen to Eleanor. See if come Monday morning she's still so chipper to be working in the trafficking of parrots. And then I call. This one I'm supposed to be cleaning, she has been squashed in this crate, and she is pissed. As I'd be too if I ended up in that fluorescent hellhole. But I'm not cutting you any slack if you bite me, you feathered fuck. I sit in here because look, it's 5:40, and me getting out there by 6 is just looking worse and worse. And I just try to scrub her neon gym as fast as I can. And the macaw's just staring at me with that beady alien parrot stare, thinking, the tables have turned. Like I've become part of the pet slave trade by choice. And I'm like, look, okay, baby, but you know, parrot people are obsessed. Whoever buys you is going to take you home and pamper you and pay attention to you, and your life is just going to be fucking perfect, okay? And you know what she does? This macaw, after I've just spent the last 15 minutes cleaning out her cage and mentally reassuring her that something better is coming for her, she shits. I've had enough. I put on a handling glove, you know, the kind of African safari animal trainers wear, and I introduce her face to the stuff. What? It's a training device of dogs. Anyway, the macaw doesn't like this and starts biting me, which really confuses me because I thought we just made a deal that that's exactly what she wouldn't do. So I decide to give her a little reprimand in the form of a tiny backhand. At which point, she flies out of her open cage door, and oh my god, it is 5 minutes to 6 and I do not need this, and I'm not gonna let her get away with it. So I get one of those fishnet things, you know, and she sees this, starts going for my eyes. She had the upper hand, I figured, with the beak and wings and all, but somehow she came out worse than the scrimmage. So now I'm on sabbatical from the Petco. Can I have 2 beers?
This kid I look after. You walk around the house and there's a meter layer of toys you have to wade into. It's like Toys R Us exploded in there. It's madness. I don't know how she could possibly play with them all. She's only 6 months old, and already she's had more possessions than I've had in my entire life. I miss my things. Not my toys, but well, it's not the things I miss exactly. It's the memories inside them. I keep my memories in things. A spoon. When I was 8, my sister Sophia hit me in the head with a spoon so hard I saw these little shooting points of light. I started to cry, but my mother wasn't there, and it was best to cry around my mother because my father wouldn't do anything. But my father came, and he picked me up and held me and sort of bounced me up and down like I was an infant. I don't think he knew what else to do, but he wanted to do something. And that was the last time my father ever picked me up. I would think about that every time I saw that one spoon. I could tell which one it was. It was bent. Sophia hit me so hard. And I would be happy every time I saw it. I keep my memories in things. Stupid girl. I should store them in my head like other people. I had to leave all my things behind. I took one thing only. A bowl. A simple little ceramic bowl. I packed it very carefully, putting my few meager clothes around it, and I brought it all the way here. My mother made the bowl. She was very intelligent, my mother. Brilliant at the cello, but very bad at pottery.
You know, she would practice, she would take lessons, but she just didn't have the talent for it. But she made this one thing, one bowl only, that turned out well. And she handed it to me. Why are you giving this to me, I asked. It's your one perfect bowl. You may never make another. I was allowed to tease her, nobody else was. And she said that I was something else perfect that she had made. And she wanted the two of us to be together. Wasn't that a nice thing to say to someone? That was a memory I wanted to keep, so I brought the bowl here. I was so honored by what that bowl meant. And I wanted to show the lady that I work for so she would know that I'm just not just a nanny. There's more to me. I'm special. A perfect bowl filled with good things. So one day I wrapped it up very carefully and I brought it to show Mrs. Herrick's. I held it out to her, all ready to tell her the story behind it, when she started unwrapping it saying, "You shouldn't have, you shouldn't have." And I stood there, and my whole body felt numb. And I saw those same little shooting points of light. You know, like when Sophia hit me in the head with a spoon. She smiled politely, but I could see it didn't even make her happy. And she said, "It's lovely," and set it on the shelf with 1,000 other little knickknacks that I end up dusting. Stupid, stupid girl. I shouldn't keep my memories in things.
Stop it. Just stop. Stop asking why I didn't report my rape. I lived through the terror, the humiliation, the rage. I couldn't face it again. Couldn't hear them call me a slut. Claim I'm a nut job. I couldn't face more men. Evisceration in the dean's office, at the police station, in court, in my boyfriend Paul's arms. So I kept quiet. I covered the teeth marks with makeup, parted my hair on the other side to hide the missing clump. Tried not to flinch when Paul slung his arm over my shoulder. Tried not to clamp my jaw shut like a trap when he kissed me. A few days ago, my rapist visited our apartment. Paul welcomed him with broed out bellows. I gagged. I convulsed when my rapist winked at me, knowingly, intimately. I dashed to the toilet to a hurl of scorching bile, sprawled on the floor like a squashed bug, rested my head against the cold tiles as the vein in my forehead pounded against them. Today, it was all about what she said. She said, "I am brave." She said, "I have power." She said, "I have spoken my truth." She said, "I have a voice." I'm not a squash bug, and if it's just a whisper in the wind, well, I have spoken. And that's all that matters to me.
So my big brother Patty decides to hang me one summer afternoon when my mom is at work. He unhooks the backyard clothesline and he makes a noose, and then he puts it around my neck. Well, I pretend to be scared, but deep down I'm thrilled. Patty tightens the noose. "Any last words?" he says. Well, I bless him the way the nuns taught us, and I say, "I forgive you." And then I shut my eyes and I wait. I don't die. Patty shoves me out of the noose just as my dad's car pulls up the driveway. Well, for punishment, my dad ties Patty to the kitchen chair. He looks beautiful sitting there, like one of the martyrs, Saint Sebastian. Even though we were born in the same year, Patty is Monday's child, fair face. Oh, what a handsome brother you have, people will say when they see us together. You know, sometimes it happens that way with sons instead of daughters. What happens? I don't know. Patty doesn't mind being tied up. He sticks his tongue out at me when Dad's not looking, and he whispers, "Ugly duckling." Well, Dad heads out the back door. "I'm going to confession. Stay away from your brother." Patty gives me a look that says, "Dad's off to Flanagan's bar." I give him a look back. Yeah, I know. When Mom walks in from work, looking beautiful as usual, she almost has a heart attack. I stand near her, hoping that she'll just look at me, but she's way too busy untying Patty. When she's done, she turns and narrows her eyes. "I am sick and tired of looking at you. As big as a house and good for nothing. Get out of my sight." And she opens up her purse and pulls out a Mars bar, my favorite. And she gives it to Patty. I am too old for dolls, but I find Raggedy Ann and we sit together on the top cellar step listening. Mom and Patty are in the kitchen together, laughing.
Well, I was a 70s kid. Every summer I looked forward to the 4th of July. On occasion, my family road trip to the annual picnic at my grandparents' house in Dayton. I spent the whole day in cahoots with my cousins. We chased each other in the scratchy brown crabgrass of the backyard. We scrambled on top of the crabapple tree. We explored a hidden, smelly creek down the street. We played poker. We ate hot dogs and chips and drank lots of Coke and peach knee-high. We picked mint from my grandfather's iced tea. We whipped around giant lawn darts. The air was crackled, sunny, and hot. You know, but most of the 4th of July of my childhood were spent on Selma Avenue in Youngstown. One memorable year, through neighborhood channels, I found a smirking teenage entrepreneur who was dealing in PA firecrackers out the back door of his house on the other side of the block. You know, ahead of the big day, I secured plenty of illegal explosives for me and my summer friends. Boy, did he have the goods. He had packs you could light all at once for a continuous pow, 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 pow. He had colorful spinning jacks that spit, whistled, and jumped into the air. He had cartons of small Roman candles that popped, bright blue and green and red. And he had boxes of bottle rockets that never quite went straight when lit, but looped about and often exploded on the neighbor's roof. We rode our bikes down the street and blew up our stash of firecrackers close to Crandall Park so that the parents could not see. My biggest challenge was from my red-haired neighbor friend who challenged me to hold on to the mini cracker as I lit the fuse and then toss it. So I did, to show off. I still have all my fingers. On the 4th, Mom didn't cook a damn thing. Back then, every day at 5 p.m., Mom ordered me and my sister to set the dining table. We sat down to a Midwestern meat, potatoes, and vegetable meal. And afterwards, we cleared the table and washed the dishes. But the 4th meant a break from ritual. Instead, my mom zipped up the street and picked up Kentucky Fried Chicken's original recipe with mashed potatoes and brown gravy and sugary slop. With that family-style meal, a small plastic American flag for the 4th was tucked into the paper red and white sack. I always managed to be the first to grab that flag, waving it as I ran outside and inside and back out again. I loved that flag. With it, I celebrated a country where everyone was happy it was summer. Everyone blew up firecrackers. And everyone loved eating greasy fried chicken right out of the bucket. After the cleanup with wet naps, and after waiting for the long summer evening to fade into night, We piled into our car and went downtown for the then once-a-year fireworks display. I sat cross-legged on my parents' Buick station wagon. I looked up and saw the flash of blooming glitter above and thought, can't get any better than this. This country, the chicken bucket, the flag, and fireworks.
There are so many moments in our lives. Happy, sad, you know, you've experienced them. Pain, loss, grief, heartache. You ever stop in the moment and just be? Sometimes I wish I could freeze a feeling and put it somewhere safe for later. Is it okay to hold on to it forever? Is it okay to wait for it to leave? Is it okay? The day my mom died is still clear in my mind. I can remember the numbness in my knees as I heard those words, "She's gone." The color receding from the world drained slowly in a pool around me. Deep, angry sobs washed over me in wave after torturous wave. That is the one moment I'd like to forget. Unfortunately, it's a flood of emotion I'll never forget. Every single one of them at once. But mostly just a specific feeling of loss. If you've ever lost anyone close to you, then you understand what I mean. That incompleteness that settles around the space they left. The nothingness. The sorrow no amount of sobbing can dissipate. It comes on like a slow rolling fog. It obscures all the other senses and it never quite leaves. Well, you learn to live with it or you don't. I did. It's unsettling how familiar it was with me at first. It lingers at the end of every thought, every sound. It follows me like an unwelcome shadow. It is unrelenting in its inconsistency. Little moments trigger it. It leaves when it wishes. No. It doesn't leave, it just fades into the background, lurking for later. Some days I almost can't deal with knowing about the nothingness. Sometimes I wish I never knew this feeling. Sometimes I wish I didn't know about this. But the moments come and go.
Now this is a tale about hair. You can call it a good hair day or a bad hair day, just depending on where you're coming from. See, I was born beautiful, with hair that shone like rubies in the sun, and I had milk white skin and all that. Well, there was this witch. Only, of course, I didn't know at first what she was a witch. I thought she was my mama or something. She was always nice when she come around with gewgaws and stuff, beads and flowers in my hair, and ice cream and cake, candles for my birthday, Barbie doll. She used to always tell me stories about the birds and the bees and all the beautiful things what lives in nature and about how we didn't need nobody but ourselves. One day, when I was getting grown up, we moved to this tower in the middle of the woods, off in the beaten path, as they say. Well, I was getting beautifuler every day, and I had this vanity, my long, and I mean long red hair that I brushed and preened, hung out the window to flash in the sun. Well, that old witch, he locked the door and threw away the key, so it was by my hair that she clumb up and down from our tower. It was this same ruby shining hair.
But man, I was smarter than a cricket, because that old witch never would let me out of the house. She said it was because evil spirits was traveling all about what would gobble up my heart and peck out my liver. Well, for a long time, I was plumb scared of those evil spirits. But I got lonesomer and lonesomer, locked up in a house in the woods all day, all by myself. So one day, sure enough, a traveling spirit come up to the door, and he knocks up and down like a scary demon. Well, did I already say this? He's selling vacuum cleaners, he says. Since I couldn't come down and unlock the door, and I was locked up in that tower anyways, I cried and I moaned about not being able to let him in. But ever resourceful, the traveling spirit told me to let down my hair, and he'd climb up. Why didn't up he climb? He was very spiritual. And after showing me all there was to know about that handheld dirt devil, excuse me for 1 second, that drink was really, really strong. Anyways, he used to come 2-3 times a week to show me all about that dirt devil. Well, I was bound to slip up, and when the old witch come to climb my hair, it slid right out of my mouth. How she was nose as heavy as a traveling spirit. Boy, was she mad. But if she was mad, I was madder. Madder than an adder. And I said, I liked the traveling spirit that he knew lots of fun games to play. Well, slam bang, she cut off all my hair. I told her she was jealous. She had grizzly old gray wires permed up tight around her head and wrinkly worry lines all over her eyes and mouth. I said I was out of here. And she said, ever heard that body? So I said, goodbye me. So when my Prince Charming, that's what I called him. I think I had too much. I'm calling, waving that old dirt devil under my window. I hollered that I had been incarcerated forever and didn't have no more hair to let down. Well, on the bench, he went away for a spell. But he was ever resourceful and come back a couple months later with a rope and a hot rod. Well, he threw that rope up to me, and I tied it to the bed, which slid right up to the window. And I skimmied right down, and we rode that hot rod out onto the yellow brick road. Only he weren't too happy when he saw the big bulge in my belly, and after the twins come along, he took a drink. Brandishing that old dirt devil all over the countryside, not bringing home a dime. And me and the kiddos were about starving to death in black and blue, so I left them. Dirt devil and hot rod and all, and I come on home to Mama. And ain't none of us gals growing no long hair for no more traveling spirits.
Tom Collins, the anesthesia by which we endure the operation of life. All through undergraduate, I attended a bar at a place called Louie's over on Bell Boulevard. It was a dive. We had maybe a dozen stools at the bar, a couple of tables, crappy jukebox, We had one regular, Gary Kowalski. He was an old salt, ex-Marine. Fought in Korea, retired before Vietnam. His wife had passed, and his kids were grown, so he spent almost every night sitting in my bar. By the time I went to law school, I knew everything there was to know about Gary. How he got the clout from some hooker in Osan. How he lived over in Monterey for about 10 years with them trained horses. How his wife gave up on chemotherapy, swallowed a bottle of Percocet on New Year's Eve, 1977. Night after night, I just listened and poured as he told me those stories. I I honestly don't even know whether I ever asked him about his life or whether he just started talking. Gary Kowalski was one of the last people to tell me the truth. People clean out their confessions for their lawyers and their spouses, but not their bartenders. Bartenders are not there to hand down judgment or to absolve sin. The only thing he can fix is an empty glass. And at the end of the shift, the bartender cleans up and walks away.
So we were vacationing in the White Mountains. All I did was open a little vanilla yogurt. There they were in the refrigerator, all toppled over, these 8 little containers, peach, blueberry, vanilla. But as soon as I opened that little vanilla yogurt, he was right there, telling me the vanilla ones were not for me. They were for Teddy, our grandson. Our daughter Bonnie had bought them the day before. I had to stay in the condo babysitting the grandkids, the not so grand grandkids. Teddy would like 2 vanilla yogurts. He says, quoting Bonnie, like he likes to quote what everyone says, including Socrates, by all means marry. If you find a good wife, you'll become happy. If you find a bad wife, you'll become a philosopher. He keeps saying Socrates says. How was I to know what Bonnie said? She's never been much of a philosopher, no. I had the idea of yogurt, and I wrote it on the bloody shopping list before he and Bonnie and Socrates went shopping. I had to sit in the stinky little condo with no windows and watch Teddy and Liddy fight over what they were going to watch on the iPad. I just let them fight. Let them bicker themselves to pieces, to smithereens. That's what I said yesterday, and you can quote me. So, I got up this morning. I pulled those yogurts out of the refrigerator. I opened it, pulled up the metallic lid, you know, that little bit that slops on the top of there, slopped off onto my pink knit pajamas. I was licking the lid off. And that's when he said it. You shouldn't have a vanilla one. Those are for Teddy. I took that uneaten yogurt and put it in a sandwich bag. I hadn't eaten any of the damn stuff, just licked the lid off. He says then I was wrong for doing that too. You opened it, you should eat it. And now here I am, quoting him. I cannot understand why I stayed with him for 30 years.
I wasn't looking to find the son of a bitch, you know. Or drink too much tonight. Lost on both accounts. I mean, how the hell can I look at claims all morning with a hangover? Property, casualty, health, life. God, they all blur into one big actuarial nightmare after one too many Jamesons. Well, don't ask me why he's a son of a bitch. You know, you were there, weren't you? Huh. Now even I don't remember. Another night with one too many Jamesons. And he wasn't even buying them. No. He just watched that other schlub getting friendly. Oh, beautiful, you look so familiar. Yeah. That's because I'm a reality TV celeb. Actuaries to the stars. He laughed like I was Amy Schumer or something. What a creep. But hey, he wants to buy me drinks, tell me how great I am. As long as he keeps his distance, who am I to show my moral superiority? But the whole time, I can feel him sitting there, watching, with his little receding hairline and those god-awful out-of-date glasses. He was so nerdy cute. And who says there's no more heroes? Listen to this. Old Oh Beautiful wants to buy me something to eat. I say I'm not hungry, but the pizza here's so damn great, he goes. I say I don't do pizza. You don't do pizza? It's a long story, I say, one that's probably beyond his attention span. But he just won't drop it. Come on, everybody likes pizza. The pie here's the best, come on. And then I see Nerdy Sheep walking over. He's caught the whole thing. The little lady says she doesn't eat pizza. Little lady? But the kicker is, he says it like he's John Wayne, the voice, and I think, is this real? Now, in most universes, Mr. Nerdy Sheep gets his face broken in, 6 places? But he's huge. 6'3", not fat, but not ripped either. Just massive. Okay, Mr. O'Beautiful goes, mumbling a bit as he crawls away from the bar. And I don't know what the hell to think. I mean, I am no little lady. Some frickin' damsel in distress? I take care of myself. But this, I don't know, there's something kind of touching about the whole thing, you know? I say to him, do you always do that? What do you mean, he goes, still drawling like he's the Duke, for God's sake. Imitate John Wayne in bars? Who? This is just how I talk. And I stare at him, jaw literally drops. And he laughs. And after a minute, so do I. And then he goes, celiac and lactose intolerance? I beg your pardon. The pizza thing, he goes. But I make this incredible spelt crust pizza with rice cheese. Now, how does he know this? How does he know me and just what to say and do? And in that moment, I think, this guy is good. So good. I'm gonna marry him. No, that was not for the plans for tonight, anytime soon, this decade. That son of a bitch. Why? Crap.
You turn a certain age and the great fuck it takes you. Years go by. Where did they go? You once lived as if nothing more were at stake than the filling of a sail on a quiet Sunday. A way of passing the time before a lifetime is past. You once joked you would have made the ideal comedy writer, mugging for the camera, busting chops and getting paid for it, but instead, You cultivated work, and work required the bowed head, the damp brow of belief. You believed, and people loved you for it. But then, an inheritance. You'll never have to worry, said your mother, as money came rolling in increments that would have staggered an ordinary working girl. But you weren't ordinary. You had wings attached to the back of your shirt. You grew taller with the respect money brings, particularly easy money, about which people go nuts, believing in luck, terrified they'll never be as lucky as you. Then one morning you wake, and there it is, descended like fog, clogging the arteries like plaque. It lowers around your ears until you can no longer hear. It's invisible, like creeping illness, and you are stunned to discover there's no second chance. What is left sits starkly before you. There are now more years behind than in front. Unrealized dreams, unimagined losses. There's no one to blame and no one to help. So you sample Marinetti's menu, little anguishes in gravy, remorse skiff in white sauce, urine of ascetic frappe. Magically, you forget how you lost a chunk of money to a Ponzi scheme your father got you into. You forget the trail of friends to whom you no longer speak. How your own sister hasn't spoken a word to you in 10 years. Not because you did horrible things to each other, but because she is who she is. And you are who you are. You forget. And it's effortless. The bucket doesn't descend like cloud or gentle rain existing in some meteorological sphere. Nor is the situation to be remedied by putting on an extra sweater or a raincoat. Fuck it happens deep within a body, perfectly clothed. It's like you've donned special glasses, like watching a rickety barrow suddenly give up its load. And as the whole thing comes cascading down, and you stand there bemused, gazing at the bouncing yellow and orange, what you take to be fruit but are really pieces of your life, you are flooded with the kind of adrenaline reserved for victims of a disaster. You succumb to chemical changes like the most destructive lust, or the second when simultaneously all the airbags deploy. And if you happen to flash on the past, like your father's dinner table rages, you no longer hear the words, "It's your fault. It's your fault." You're recalling the time you confided in your aunt and she turned on you. After having first set herself up as your best friend, you were 10 at the time, and she hauled off and slapped you in the face. You let go of the feeling of being crushed like a bug, definitively killed without a shred of remorse. Day-to-day life becomes like news breaking halfway across the world in a country you've never heard of. And attached to that far-off place is a string that winds its way to your house, to a corner where you sit, contemplating the life you have and the one you thought you'd have. And this is when you discover the end of the string is wound tightly around a pillar you never noticed before, which just so happens to be the central support of your house. You never anticipated the awakening of this new person, a changeling, neonatal immaturity. You have become someone you don't recognize. A woman who no longer gives a fuck.
There was a corner near Broadway and Union, one of the numbered streets, with a Popeyes across the street from a KFC and a Church's. We used to call it the corner of Broadway and Chicken. One winter Sunday morning, I was hanging out with this old guy from the neighborhood, preacher. Got his name from the multiple Jesus tattoos he got in the joint. Preacher and I were desperate to keep the party going. We had a bunch of beer in the fridge, but we knew we wouldn't be able to drink it all unless we had a little something to smoke with it. You fly, I'll buy, he told me through his skinny yellow teeth, and he gave me $60 to get more rock. So I did the fiend walk, pacing the numbered streets between Broadway and Fleet, 55th to 71st, looking for a dope boy. Winter, Sunday morning, 5 a.m. There's no dope boys. Now I'm approaching the corner of Broadway and Chicken again, about to head back toward Preacher's place. A little black kid, couldn't have been more than 12 years old, came out from between two houses. He reached his thumb and index finger into his mouth, pulled a baggie from between his cheek and gum. How much you need? He asked me. How old are you? I asked. How much you need? He asked again. I said, look, I don't want to buy dope from no kid. He pulled out 4 beautiful stones. Could easily have passed his 40s from a more imposing dealer. I got 30s, I'm giving away for 20, he tells me, because I want to go to bed. Man, I thought about what I was up to when I was 12. I was a fuck up. Drinking a bit, smoking weed already. At least I wasn't slinging dope. Shit. I thought about this kid's future. Pictured him in juvie within a year, graduating to real prison once he got popped as an adult. Then I thought about those rocks. Those little off-white pearls, and at least another couple hours of fuzz and blur. Thought about the half case of beer still in the fridge back at Preacher's place. And I thought about the fact that Sunoco would start selling beer again in a couple hours, and I just knew Preacher would buy if I'd fly. Especially if we'd scored a few boulders. So I stood there in the shadow of Broadway and Chicken. I told this kid, give me 3.
Yes, please. Another Jameson.
Hi, my name's Chuck Allen, and I'm an alcoholic. I have not found it necessary to take a drink since April 11th, 1980. For those of you trying to do the math, I'll save you the trouble. I've been sober for a little over 30 years. Last day I drank, and I remember it well. I was in that front room. I was no longer able to get out of the house. I had a 5th of whiskey, I had a 5th of brandy. Marianne, she went out and bought me a quart of 20% port wine and a dozen bottles of Carling's ale. And I worked at it very seriously all day long. Sometime in the early evening, the wine was gone. There were 3 bottles of Carling's ale left. The brandy was gone. And there were 3, maybe 4 ounces of whiskey left in the bottle. I still hadn't reached the point where I could go out. I couldn't stop this damn thing here. I couldn't stop it. It was like a hamster on one of those wheels in a cage. It just kept running and running and running, and I couldn't stop it. I thought to myself, oh my God, if I could just black out. So I went in and I laid down on the bed and took, involuntarily for the first time in my life, a good honest look at Chuck Allen. But this thing just wouldn't stop. And I don't know. I don't remember much back then. But as I think back on it, I yelled, "Oh my God," just out of pain. And I really think that that meant something. Marianne, she came in and she laid down on the bed right beside me and she said, "Chuck, why don't you do something about it?" I don't know what happened. I haven't the slightest idea, but it was like something just exploded inside of me. I reared up out of that bed and I said, "I'm going to." And I really believe that that was God speaking through me. Well, that next morning, I went to my first meeting. I did what those people there asked me to do. And I haven't had a drink since.
I called it sneaking out. They ain't really sneaking if they didn't care that I was gone. Too busy yelling. You would think a house as old as ours would have much thicker walls. Arguing mostly over money. Money Dad lost at the track. Money Mom no longer makes because she's too afraid to leave the house. Sometimes over me. My failing grades, the fights I get in at school, my newfound knack for vandalism. Convinced I'm using drugs. How's he gonna get into a good school now? Harvard? Yeah, right. A Jewish mother's pipe dream, even in the best of times. BU? Still a possibility, if I can get my shit together. Brooklyn College, if I can. At least they'll be able to keep an eye on me. Mom had hoped that I would follow in my father's disgruntled footsteps down to Wall Street, because that's where the real money is these days, and don't you want to be successful like your father? And because I don't, well, it must be his fault. He didn't play catch enough with me when I was young. Or else it's she coddled me too much and turned me into a mama's boy. I'm out the door by the crash of the first plate against the wall. At least they say it's the wall. Could just be crappy aim. Out into the Brooklyn night. Streetlights painting the darkness orange. Music spilling out of windows left open to the summer heat. Who can afford AC? Fire hydrants cranked open for kids who have long since gone and now left alone sobbing into the streets. To the Q station at Cordell, you jump the turnstile. It's easy. No one there that time of night to see. No one who cares or who's cared about. Crackheads and pimps and broken men whose bedrooms squeak and sway as they sleep. The train comes to a stop. And I've got 27 seconds. I've timed it. I can do a tag now in under 20. Months and months of practice. Sometimes I could get 2 tags out before a train starts off. Sometimes a train starts off mid-tag and my name ends up a spray-painted comet with a long graffiti tail. I dream of being able to run as fast as a train so I can write it as it moves. No more tags, but whole pieces. Bomb the train with murals from one end to the other. The last car with my tag painted so big that everyone can see as it barrels through the city beneath those giant buildings clawing at the sky. Citibank, Chase, Trump, and blazing across their roofs. Tell me, why is it that when I write my name on something, it's vandalism? But when J.P. Morgan does it, oh, it's success.
Sexual tension. Ain't it something? Ain't it? I mean, we've been on this planet how many millions of years, and somehow we ain't figured out the sex yet? I'd just like to make one point here, please. People have sex a lot, mostly with other people. It ain't a tragedy so long as you keep it out in the open and don't make an issue of it. It's like, okay, my foster parents, right? They was pretty rich and everything, so we used to travel all over. Not like Disneyland, I'm talking Indonesia, right? We went to like Peru, but the one trip that sticks with me is Greece. See, I was 7, so I don't remember all of it, but you know, the museums. There was all these statues, right? All these statues of these Grecians. They was naked. Gods and whatnot. Guys, I'm saying. I'm 9, okay? I'm looking at these naked guys. Have you seen them? All of them's missing 2 very important things. The nose is one, okay? The other, you're following me, right? I'm thinking, what is the story here? Is this censorship? But then I think, who's gonna censor noses? Then I get it, right? I guess somebody got careless moving all them statues through the doorways and the things just broke off. But then, you know, I mean, if that was it, then why not just glue the poor Greeks back together? Or set up an exhibit. Stand them all right up. Right this way, ladies and gentlemen, ancient Greek penises. Like Easter Island, only smaller. But then I realized, you know, it hits me. Some archaeologist must have them. Some, like hundreds, I mean thousands of them, locked up in a basement somewhere. Because, fine, you can take all the sex stuff off display and try to hide it where nobody's going to see, but please, let's not pretend that it is gone completely.
NASA did a few experiments with time. They took 2 clocks, put one in space, and when it came back, it was out of sync with the other clock. It proved Einstein's theory that time and space are relative. Really. Look it up, like the dog in Back to the Future. Isn't that interesting? I've been trying to learn more about it, but you have to know a lot of physics and math. It's complicated. But it can be graphed and deciphered. You can look at a chart and see the different timelines mathematically. Let me try to explain it. I'm standing here, okay? Well, now I'm standing here, but I'm still standing there just 10 seconds ago, at a different point in time. Things happen one after another only because we perceive it that way. Does that make sense? Kevin's dead. I probably should have said that first so you understand why I'm preoccupied. He's dead because of me. My therapist says I need to stay things as they are, no glossing over. So, this is a fact. Kevin was a pain in the ass. He was born with CKD, chronic kidney disease. I knew right away. I was 6, I said, "Mom, you look sick." And he was. He got put on the transplant list right away, but there aren't a lot of fresh child kidneys up for grabs. He needed a lot of help. I was his permanent babysitter. Playing games I was too old for. He was smart. He didn't need my help with homework. He taught me about the ocean, dolphins. That was his favorite. I'd always try to take him out of the house, let him be a kid, but our parents would never let me. It was boring. As soon as I turned 16, I was driving him to dialysis. Sitting in that fucking waiting room, I can see every painting, every old magazine, never making eye contact with anyone because it was always the same people. No one wanted to talk about why they were there. It's fucking depressing. 3 times a week for 2 years. You imagine? That was the deal of getting my own car. He needed blood work, I was the chauffeur. But I did it on time, every time, except for one fucking time. I went to one party. One. I was 18, God forbid I have a little fun. I got drunk. I crashed on the couch. My therapist says it's okay that I was happy that day. The next day, this girl asked me for a ride home. A really hot girl. Hot girls never talk to me. I'm withdrawn. And we ended up talking and driving everywhere and nowhere all day. I knew what time it was. I didn't care. I dropped her home around 6, and she kissed me. My first kiss at 18. Pathetic. And when I got home, Kevin wasn't feeling good. What else is new? We told our parents that I had taken him to dialysis. The plan was to go the next day to make up for it. And that morning, it's just not fair. You know what the chances are of dying from missing one session? Pretty fucking low. He was 12. Everyone told me he was in heaven. I don't believe in heaven. Kevin was gone, out of existence because of me. My parents forgave me, said it wasn't my fault. Fuck that. All I ever wanted my whole life was time without a pain in the ass invalid. And now I have it. Nothing but time. So like a new toy, I learned about time. Do you know what it really means? Relativity? It means Kevin's fine. He's happy and I'm with him. Not here, at this point in the timeline, but just a mile from here. Kevin and I are watching TV and he's laughing and I don't have to ask him to forgive me. Isn't that interesting?
I want you to catch a glimpse of the way that I was. Not the way I am now. I used to be a girl with dreams. Dreams of good life, family, good job, nice things. I used to be a little girl in a dress, jumping rope on a sidewalk. Maybe I should just start with where everything went wrong. It felt right. More right than it ever had before. I inhaled and suddenly, the joys of realized childhood dreams, the joys of seeing my child for the first time after giving birth, the elation of my best sexual experience of being loved, really loved. I exhale. Lighters, spoons, syringes, pipes, papers, blades, mirrors, they all became tools I picked up along the way. Mastered them all, except for the mirror. Somewhere along the way I broke the mirror, maybe just as well. Maybe I should start someplace else. My son lies dying in the hospital. Let's just start there. Today, what do I say about today? Today, I sat on my couch, pushing buttons on my game controller, trying to distract myself from the voices in my head. Turning up the volume on the TV so I don't hear the buzz of the phone. I can still see it light up though. No matter how loud the room gets. I know it's him. Call or text, call or text. It's an endless pattern throughout the day.
Last week I could answer his calls. Last week there was still time. Last week he was going to get better. Last week was followed by 7 days of texts, swollen selfies, 7 days of unmentionable call declines, 7 days of horrifying photographic images of bloody vomit bowls and bedpans, 7 days of my son chasing, and me running. Well, this week the race has run its course. I don't have the time anymore to clean myself up and be the person that I want to be. You know, I counted to 7 today. 7 times I tried to open the door to go to the hospital. And 7 times I cowered. And I sat back down on my secondhand couch. Each call is a cry to have meet his mother at his bedside. And with each call, I just retreat deeper and deeper, hiding in the shadows of my shame. You know, somewhere inside me, there is still love and kindness. And the knowledge that if I could just muster up the courage and go, he wouldn't see the mistakes that blanket me. He'd see something else. Something simpler. His mother.
You know, when I first saw Angeline, she was tying a red bow on a blue dog. It was the most beautiful bow I'd ever seen. Angeline was the kindest, most beautiful woman, I'd ever seen. Now the dog had a different mind on both accounts because he jumped out of her hands and ran off into the parade where he bit a trombone player just for spite. So I said hello, and we shared a snow cone and watched the parade. Angeline and me, I mean, not the dog. The 4th of July Queen, she rolled by in a white Cadillac. Angeline asked me something, and for a moment I turned away from her hazel eyes to see the sharp sparkle of the 4th of July Queen's smile and the mirrored glare of her plunging costume. It was, I'm sad to say, the first of my many dalliances from Angeline. She never strayed from my side, though. Soon I let her down by saying yes. Did you ever stand up and agree to enter a contest that you knew you had no chance to win? You know, like spelling or pie eating, or when there's a real champ in the room? You know, that's how it felt as I stood at the altar next to Angeline. Yeah, like there was somebody in the back of the room taking note of the number on my back and saying, yeah, he's gonna come in last. Only with Mary, the prize comes first. Contest comes later. So we moved into a little house on stilts out by the lake. The living room went right out over the lake. You could hear the water calling out on a quiet night. So we moved in, just the two of us. And then the sadness moved in soon after. settled in one night and just moved in like it belonged there. Like we'd suddenly painted all the walls black. So then it was the three of us. You know, we never did find the dog. Oh, look, I was what I am. I was what I am, and there's no denying it, but who else was I going to be? Oh, but God, I loved her. And she loved me. Once. And then she began to love the sadness. So we found her dress in the wiregrass. And we all of us put a rock on her gravestone, her parents and me, and Angeline's cousin Emma down from the city. But the first time I saw Angeline, she was standing right there in the living room of our lake house. Her eyes still full of kindness and sadness and something else besides. She never answers me when I call out. Every night she comes, and every night she brings more rocks. It's like she's trying to bring the lake bottom up to the house. After the first 50, the floors started groaning. Last week, the stilts started to question themselves. Another while of this, and the whole house is just going to slide right down into the water beside her. And I just sit there waiting for, just waiting. Look, all I want is for her to say, I just want her to know. That's all. I just want her to know. I just want her to know. I just want her to know.
People ask me, what are you going to do? So I tell them there's life to do. And then they look at me like I'm crazy and they walk away. What are they doing if it's not life? Aren't they eating and drinking and shitting and walking and talking? Maybe they're living someone else's life. A woman who came in here yesterday knows every detail of Kim Kardashian's average day. She's the go-to girl for everything Kardashian, so she has no room left for her own life. There's this guy that I know, spends 10 hours a day memorizing baseball statistics so that he can be king of the bar. This guy thinks he's top shelf. He's just a capital L loser. Maybe those dweebs in the basement across the street wear Star Trek underwear to bed so they can dream of Spock because they lost themselves in some writer's imagination and no one except William Shatner has enough guts to yell at him, get a life! Get a freaking life. This morning, my friend asked me what I was going to do about my girlfriend. So I told her, there's life to do. She stared at me like I had 3 heads. She's been in the same job for 10 years and she hates every minute of it. She hates every stinking minute that she is a slave to a madman. When she does one, it's not her own. So she starts talking a mile a minute about how she hates her boss and her job and her apartment. And so I tell her, what life you do is not your own. She just seems confused and changes the topic and complains that she's stuck in life and there's nothing to do. And I lose it. And I yell at her, there is life to do. I figure maybe I'll be more specific. And I yell, there is your life to do, so go do it already. She changes the topic again. Says my boss this and my boss that and my boss is an ass and I can't take it anymore, so I just close my eyes, think about my goals for my life and my plans and my desires and my compromises and my family and my writing and my stuff and my more stuff and she just keeps talking and I hear her complaining about her boyfriend and her family and how she's stuck in this and that and I finally quiet her and I ask, whose life are you living? Take a deep breath and tell me, if you're not living your own life, whose life are you living? And she starts talking about her favorite song and her Facebook page and her boyfriend from 3 years ago and the splinter in her finger. And so I ask her, if you could live your own life, what would it feel like? She stops talking. She was quiet for a while. She stayed quiet. And then, looking down, she said, empty. I would feel empty. And I looked at her, and with as much kindness and wisdom as I could muster, I said, look at me. That's a start. That's a good start. Now let me help you take care of that splinter in your finger.